Thanks for tuning in to the Illuminations Podcast. We love having you here. It is our mission to be a beacon of light on your journey towards conscious and mindful living. In our weekly episode, we bring you inspiring change makers in the field of spirituality, healing, personal growth, and wellness who share their insight and expertise so you can navigate your way to a happier, healthier, and more purposeful life. So welcome to another episode of the Illuminations World Podcast. I am your host, Soniyaa. And if you feel bloated, tired, moody, or like your skin is always reacting and nothing is working, this episode might be the missing piece. Today, I am in conversation with Ayesha Gambhir. She's a certified nutritional therapist who helps people get clear answers about their gut, skin, and health. Ayesha does not do the guesswork. She tests, and what shows up in the test results can explain whatever symptoms that you may be experiencing right now. So if you've ever walked out of an appointment and been told that everything is fine and everything looks fine, but you're still feeling off, this conversation is going to make a lot of sense. So let's hear what your body might be trying to say and how you can finally start making the choices that are right and best for you. So Ayesha, welcome to the Illuminations Podcast. We're so happy to have you here. So I'm so intrigued about this topic because I know that gut health is a concern that so many people face, not just women. But everybody has a journey, and I've been following you very closely on Instagram and been very intrigued and curious about the work that you do. So I'd love to start by understanding your journey and what brought you into this space in the first place.
So myself, I had acne and eczema. I initially got it when my grandma was actually on her last deathbed. My skin triggered, I broke out with acne, eczema, and I didn't know what to do. So the doctors told me to go and take antibiotics. Dermatologists told me to use creams. I did all of that, masked everything, and then realized I was causing more problems for myself. And then I thought, no, there has to be a way out of this. And I knew that nutrition was a close part to me, and the healthy way, healthy lifestyle was something that I was very much fond of. So then I studied nutrition for 3 years, got into doing that. And then once I finished my degree, I then went down the route of healing myself. So I was the guinea pig, and I thought, okay, I need to try it out, see how it goes. And then I managed to heal myself from the inside out. And one of the main aspects of it was using the functional testing, because that was what gave me answers into healing my skin.
So what's the difference between functional testing and like a medical lab testing? Because, sometimes I feel like you go to the doctor and you're told that everything is fine, your blood work, your routine, your tests are all normal, but we're still feeling anxious, we're still feeling off, we're still feeling bloated, we're still feeling like we haven't got the answers that we're looking for. So how does functional testing help to clarify?
So with the medical labs and doing blood work, that's just very conventional, and it's just quite surface level. Now, the doctor's going to tell you that everything is normal. Like, I have clients who come to me and say they've done, even with gastroenterologists, they've done endoscopies and colonoscopies, but everything is fine. Now, with functional testing, it digs deeper. So it looks into your digestive function. Have you got any inflammation? What is your bacteria levels like in your gut? Have you got parasites? Are you lacking fiber, for example, in your diet? And all these components build around the gut. And then that's why people come to me and they're having these problems day in, day out, but not understanding what's going on, because blood work is just, like I said, it's just quite surface level. But to get deeper into that, the functional testing plays a really big role in that.
All right. So when you say functional testing, what exactly do you mean by that? Is it?
So it's comprehensive testing that looks deep. So I do different types. I offer stool testing that looks deep into your gut.
Right.
For example, if you want to look into hormones, Dutch testing. And then if you want a full MOT of your body, I do have another comprehensive urine test that looks into your deficiencies. What are you lacking? And it's all done with urine. Okay. So blood, of course, does play a part, but this is now looking deeper into someone's health, but optimal health.
Okay. And if, so we've heard, like, for example, a lot of people face issues related to mental health. Like, for example,
depression, anxiety, and I've done a bit of research myself, which highlights the fact that a lot of these problems might be arising from the gut.
Yes.
And so simply by changing your diet, you can actually overcome so many, mental health issues. How precise is that? And does that mean a person can overlook mental health care, or
yeah,
how would
because
that work?
there's the gut-brain connection.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is a very good connection to show with what's happening in the gut is affecting our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So one things I look into are inflammation in the gut lining. Now if someone is severely inflamed and they've got leaky gut, then that's going to create a host of issues. And if they are either overgrown in certain bacteria or depleted in certain bacteria, that's what's going to give you evidence what to actually optimize. Because we see people, like I speak to people all the time and they say to me, I'm taking probiotics, I'm having lots of fermented foods. But the reality is not everyone needs that because they already have enough. And then just nutrients like omega-3, that's really important. And that's what the testing can dictate how much your body actually needs of. And it's about how does your body metabolize these nutrients as well.
Right.
And break it down.
Very interesting. And so let's say that I come to you and I have a gut health issue.
Yeah.
And I do all the functional testing. I get my results. You put me on a diet and everything is okay for a while, right? But let's say, for example, if I haven't addressed the stress that I'm experiencing, if my lifestyle is constantly, filled with worry, filled with fears, how much would the impact of everything you're doing affect that process? If that makes sense. So let's say, for example, I'm working on my diet, because so many times I see people, they take all like the supplements, they're super healthy, they are, eating clean, but yet they're struggling with so many health issues and gut health issues in spite of doing everything right.
Yeah.
So how would we address those people?
So one of the foundations I always lay whenever I'm working with someone is digestive function. Now, a lot of people lack digestive enzymes. Now, if we're not absorbing and digesting our nutrients, then how is the body going to utilize those nutrients? So that's the key in any protocol, because absorption and digestion is so key, especially when it comes to proteins, fats, and even carbohydrates, because we need all different types of food groups for different processes to be effective in the body.
Okay, and so that would probably be the like the missing piece of the puzzle. So 100%. I might be doing everything right, but the body's not absorbing it correctly.
Absorption is like the key.
Okay. And when do you take these enzymes? Is it before a meal or?
Yes. There's different types of enzymes. Now I see people struggling to break down fat, so I'll give them a lipase-based enzyme that targets fat digestion. Then there could be someone who lacks low stomach acid. Now we need stomach acid to break down proteins. So then it varies, but it's usually right before a meal, usually lunch and dinner, because they're key meals, not usually at breakfast.
Okay. And what are some of the most common issues that people come to you with? I know it's completely gut health, but what are some of the side effects of gut health that people mainly have an issue with here in Dubai, especially?
Gosh, a lot of skin problems, because I know even from my own experience, I had that, but acne is a really big one. I see constipation to be a problem with a lot of people, and a lot of hormonal issues like PMS, PCOS, because again, now, as I mentioned about gut-brain axis, the gut and the hormones are also connected. So when you actually establish what's happening in the gut, you can ultimately help and balance your hormones as well through the liver. The liver helps to detoxify estrogen, for example, so you haven't got this recirculation issue going on. And that's why those people who are constipated tend to also have hormonal imbalances.
That's really interesting. Like wellness is so personalized, right? So what works for one may not work for another. And I had an incident where, a couple of months ago, I went back and I was super healthy with my diet. I was eating a lot of raw. I was eating a lot of greens. I was having like ACV water, which is apple cider, like a vinegar to reduce my blood sugar. And And I reintroduced lentils in my diet. And suddenly I was on this for about 2 months and I completely broke out around my chin area. And I was so upset because I'm just like, here I am eating super healthy, I'm being super clean. And yet I had this experience. And so, I always have an issue when people say, oh, like your bananas are healthy for you, or lentils are healthy for you, or X is healthy for you, because we're so unique as individuals, and what obviously works really well for one person may not work for the other. And I started to eliminate everything like in my diet, especially a lot of raw foods. And suddenly I cleared up in a week, and it was like miraculous because I was so upset. I thought I had hormonal issues. And so I used a process of elimination to really understand what was the actual trigger. And it ended up being lentils and a lot of raw, so like raw, like vegetables instead of cooked vegetables. And so now I had made a huge change. And then again, I was completely back to normal. So how do you address issues like this? Is it through just the testing, which gives you the results of what may work for one and may not work so well for the other?
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. Yeah. That's for sure.
That's for all like wellness, I think, 100%. Today.
It's a very personalized approach. So when the results come back, whatever is showing in that report is when I will personalize the protocol for that person. Like you mentioned about apple cider vinegar, I thought I'll note that because, so as we know, it does help improve stomach acid, but for some people that can create histamine issues. They can be, they don't have the enzyme to break down histamine. Now, fermented foods contain histamine. Yeah,
because when you, when you watch when you watch all these podcasts on the internet and on YouTube, and everybody tells you like to reduce blood sugar, you have to take ACV water.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily suit everybody. And whilst it may work really well for some, it may not for the other.
Absolutely. So it's all about what your body needs. And even when test results come back, I explain to the client every single marker, what does it mean? What's the function of it? And how can we actually help?
Right.
And it's all about explaining to them that it's not an overnight fix. It is a process, and it's a roadmap in the right direction.
Right. And so if a person is experiencing gut health issues and they come to you, how long is the journey? Because, most people prefer blue pill method. Like, I'm going to come for a couple of sessions, I'm going to do the test and everything's going to be okay. How long does it take to actually start seeing the results? Or is that based on how severe the issue is, or how would that work?
Yeah, it's hard to give a time to that, but depending on what shows, but usually within like 6 weeks, I'd want to see and start to hear that, okay, their symptoms are improving. Now, if they come to me for skin problems, then obviously visually, if skin is starting to clear and heal, then that's a sign that things are working. But when it comes to like the internal aspect of things in the gut, then again, it's all about how do they feel internally. But I'd want to say that within the 6 weeks, is when you start to see results. See results, yeah.
And what about weight loss? What is the link between gut health and weight loss? Because summer is 3 months away and everybody wants the summer body. So what would you say would impact your ability to lose weight and how optimum your gut is working for you?
So I'd say obviously diet plays a really big role here.
It's 80% apparently.
Literally. So the testing also does indicate where you're lacking foods. So you could have there's markers in the test where your metabolic health is not functioning. So you need more fiber, for example. Now, fiber helps you keep full for longer, so you haven't got these dips in energy, but also knowing how to balance your plate is very important. So protein, good quality protein, healthy fats, and complex carbs. So it's slow release energy.
And if a person is undergoing stress, how does cortisol play a part in gut health?
Cortisol drives inflammation, and cortisol is a stress hormone. So we don't want to not have cortisol, but we don't want to have too much of it. So we need to make sure that we regulate it in the morning, and then we also regulate it at nighttime by doing lifestyle practices, breathing, meditation. Come to Illuminations, you can get yourself sorted. So yeah, gut health. I do stool testing, and I also do hormone testing when it comes to people who have issues with their weight, because we want to understand how is your body metabolizing cortisol, because not everyone can do it. So we need extra support to do that. things like L-theanine, ashwagandha, green tea in the daytime, just things that help to calm the nervous system.
You know, there's so much information floating around everywhere, and it's like one day we hear something is really good for you, and then 3 days later we hear something is not so great for you, and we're also confused because, like example, ACV water, right? We were told apple cider vinegar is the best way to reduce blood sugar, like prior to meals, and then now we hear a lot of research saying actually that's not that great, and so you know we're constantly on these wellness trends, right? How does it relate back to the philosophy that we should be eating what our ancestors ate, and they weren't gluten-free, or they weren't so particular about, everything being sort of, no processed. Naturally, I guess everything was not so processed back then.
Yes.
But there are so many different types of trends that are on today. What's your perspective on that? Like, how do we approach lifestyle and food and diet to be more grounded and perhaps create a sense of balance, because we have to live our life. We all love to eat,
I think just keeping it simple is important, because we can make things really complicated and trying all these different things at once, but I don't think that actually helps.
Yeah.
So I think keeping the basics simple and trying to have more whole foods, because for example, like people come to me, they're vegan, and as you probably seen, like vegan stuff is so processed and it just doesn't cut it, because they think in their minds that, okay, it's vegan and I'm having all this goodness, but ultimately it's all processed. So I think just keeping it simple with whole foods, you can't really go wrong.
And what's your take on organic? Because some people say it's not that, important, and only specific type of foods are required to be organic. Yeah. So what would the list be if I had to pick and choose what type of organic produces I should bring at home, and which is okay to get by with if they weren't organic?
I think eggs is a key one to be organic, and protein, and certain veg. So things like your peppers, anything raw. Because we want to, you see, with the pesticides and things like that, I think the raw vegetables that we get in the supermarket, we want to ensure that if they are organic, you're better off. And also like pantry staples, so things like quinoa, rice. So we want to make sure that it's less harmful and they've got less harmful ingredients that can actually trigger. Because like when I went through my own healing journey, I did try and go quite organic, because I wanted to make sure that everything was clean, and because at that time when I first started, I was like, what is actually the problem? Why am I having these symptoms? Because it just wasn't normal. It came out of the blue. So and then I tried to implement different things, and I kind of found my own feet in which was what was working for me.
I always think the philosophy that if simplicity is scalable, right? So the more simple we keep our routine, the more we're able to do it more often. And the more we're able to repeat, our patterns, our healthy patterns. And therefore it's more scalable. So in terms of like supplements, if one had to choose like the most essential supplements to take on a daily basis, which would they be?
I would say omega-3, because our bodies can't make it. So we need to either get it from food, which again, not everyone's going to eat oily fish or many nuts and seeds, because again, therapeutically, we want to make sure that we reach optimal health. Magnesium is a good one, because we lack the mineral. Our bodies just don't have enough of that. And I also see that from test reports that everyone lacks it. So magnesium is also key. And there's different types of magnesiums that provide a different function. Digestive enzymes, again, not for everyone, but a lot of the people that I work with, they all need enzymes, because they've got these symptoms for a reason. So that their digestive capacity is just not functioning how it should be functioning.
Right.
And I've gone vitamin D.
Yeah.
And
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Okay, so I think I'm on the right track here.
Yes, and I don't say probiotics here, and the reason I say that is because not everyone needs it. I've seen people have more problems taking a probiotic than not taking it. Yeah.
And how's that so?
They just, because they could be, for example, with skin, there could be histamine-producing bacteria in the probiotic that is creating more problems.
Oh,
so there's so many different types of probiotic strains that we have to make sure that, okay, if someone is having a histamine problem, to make sure that that particular supplement doesn't have that bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of like research that goes into like when it even comes to me telling the client what supplement to take, because I have to take into account everything that they've mentioned.
Wow. And how consistent are clients with keeping up with their programs? You know, because we are all creatures of habit.
Yeah.
What have you noticed? Some of the challenges that people face when they come onto a gut health program?
Oh, so just recently, because I work with a lot of Muslims as well, Ramadan's been quite challenging for them. Now they've not been able to carry out certain things, even though the whole fasting process can help them, but then it hasn't helped someone who's got acid reflux, for example. Things like that. They have heartburn, indigestion, so that hasn't also been suitable for them. But usually the way I see it is when they start to see a change themselves, they do want to jump on the bandwagon and actually carry it out. It's when they don't see a change, that's when they're not going to think, okay, this is not helping. But 95% of the time, they do.
Well done. Okay, great. And can you share a powerful story of a client that you had who came in, you know, for an issue and it was so extreme, and how they were able to kind of completely transform from your approach?
Yeah, so I'll use acne because I see that quite a lot. So this lady came to me and she had quite a few things, but I'll just pick on the key ones. So acne was the main issue, with a bit of eczema, and then she had severe bloating. Couldn't really understand what was happening, but the first thing I said to her is, let's carry out a stool test because I want to see what's happening.
Yeah.
Found out from the stool test that she had a Candida overgrowth, and then she also had low digestive enzymes, and she also had a bacterial overgrowth. So she had a methane-producing bacteria. Now, the methane-producing bacteria can contribute to bloating as well. So once we supported her overgrowth of bacteria, once we also started looking into her digestive function, everything started to change. And she also had constipation as well. So markers like beta-glucuronidase is responsible for hormone recycling, like estrogen. So if you're constipated and you're not excreting excess hormones, things are going to recirculate back into the bloodstream. And that's what's going to trigger her inflammation and her breakouts. So I did this phase for her because I didn't want to overwhelm her. But just knowing what the tests were showing and incorporating that into her plan, it was life-changing for her, and she healed within 4 months.
Really?
Yeah.
And healed in the sense that her acne...
completely under control. It was just more like dealing with surface, like marks and things like that, but the active breakouts and the bloating. And then she was going to the toilet every single day. So that was really, really good progress.
And what about weight loss? Was that like a byproduct of healthy eating?
As in generally?
Yeah.
Weight loss, so obviously I have to make sure that the person is also doing exercise as well.
Right.
Because it's not just about, okay, what are you eating every single day? It's all about your metabolism.
Really?
And what could be triggering what is the reason that they're not shifting weight? And just recently I see a lot of the hormonal issues that contribute to this as well. But also that they've just got a very sluggish or even sluggish liver, sluggish metabolism, and they've got very irregular and imbalanced blood sugars because they're constantly craving foods. So it's all about optimizing the basics before we actually get onto them shifting the weight.
And you know, one of the latest wellness trends, that I see quite prevalent is blood sugar, and monitoring one's blood sugar is the new, trend in the wellness space. And that relates to anti-aging and, how good your skin looks or how young you look, because obviously if you have glucose spikes on a constantly, what ends up happening is that obviously not good for your body. You end up gaining more weight. You end up looking more bloated. Your skin looks a lot more, sluggish, I feel. What is your perspective on that in relation to everything that you're doing? Because your specific focus is gut health. But for example, I was told to go on an intermittent fast, which means still eat, but not spiking my blood sugar level till lunchtime. So for example, I could have healthy fats, I could have healthy nuts, I could have eggs, but anything that would not spike my sugar levels up until noon or lunchtime. What is your perspective on that? Because I've been following that and I see tremendous results in terms of skin, in terms of, trying to preserve my youth as much as possible.
I think for someone who doesn't have any hormonal issues and any imbalanced hormones, then of course I think I'm all for it, but which will help with losing weight. But for someone who comes to me that really is hormonally imbalanced and they have like PCOS, menopausal, things like that, I don't recommend fasting because I feel like they need a sufficient start to the morning to keep them going because they can only fast so long overnight.
Right.
They need to like replenish their body in the morning.
Yeah, but no, we still eat, but we don't eat anything that spikes your blood sugar, basically. So you're still having like healthy fats. And what's your perspective on healthy fats in the morning?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to start your day.
Okay, that's
because it's good for hormones, and that's obviously key.
Right. And how does what you do in terms of, because I know you use a very scientific approach to health and gut health. How would the Ayurvedic and the naturopathic approach kind of work with what you're doing, or do you not subscribe to that?
So I went to a retreat last year in Sri Lanka, and it was all Ayurveda, and I know bits of it, obviously being Indian, but I wanted to know more about my body type. So understanding your doshas and things like that was very, very interesting. And I do think it does play a really big role because when I actually realized when I got told the foods that I shouldn't have, I feel like when I do have those foods, I do feel a bit different with myself. But I think it does tie in very well into what I do. I don't practice it because I don't know a lot about it, but I have a little bit of knowledge on it.
So how about an integration between Ayurveda and functional testing? Is anybody doing that? And if we could integrate that together, so you'd have the best of ancient wisdom as well as a modern
I think it's a very good
approach.
idea. I think it's something that no one's doing, and I think it's a very good approach because this awareness now about Ayurveda, I think it's coming out. When I know my grandma used to follow it years ago, and I do think it's a very good.
Because there's so many beautiful tips. Like, for example, I was also told to have fenugreek water every morning with the seeds.
Yes.
And I've been doing that, and it's, really helpful for my gut. I was facing a lot of gut health issues, and now I don't face that at all. The amount of fiber that you have is just amazing. And I think as Indians or as Asians, we naturally are exposed to a very healthy vegetarian diet if we choose to. So for example, rather than having like wheat rotis or naan breads, we can have millets.
Yes.
And those are age-old practices that are now being reintroduced back into our diets today. What is your perspective on that?
Completely for it, literally, because most of my clients are Asians and they want to eat healthy Asian food, Indian food, Pakistani type food. And this is exactly what I tell them to do because they still want to enjoy their type of cooking, but the healthier way that's suitable for them. And millet, buckwheat, all these different types of gluten-free grains, I think they're very, very beneficial.
Okay, amazing. So any last thoughts, words, and tips if people wanted to do an approach on their own without actually seeing a gut health practitioner? What books would you recommend? What kind of resources would you ask them to educate themselves on if, for example, people didn't have the means to avail a gut health practitioner? Or is this the only way?
I think for me, so the way I see it is testing, you're not guessing anymore.
Right.
Now, from doing testing, what does your body need? What do I need to do to make changes and actually feel better? Now, I did this. I brought books. I went down that route of looking at just reading things because, of course, a book is quite general to anyone who's reading it.
Yeah.
And for
it just
me,
brings about the initial awareness.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's all, okay, what do you need as a person? Because like you said before, you go online, you've read things, apple cider vinegar is a key thing.
Yeah.
Now,
correct.
We know that taking things like that, we know the benefits of it, but does your body actually need it? And the answer is not necessarily.
So the transformation is in the testing. And
Yes.
can you just quickly recap what are the best tests to take if a person was looking out for that, and where can they find that? And and how can we find you if we'd like to work with you?
So the tests come from the UK, and because it's Practitioner, it has to go through a practitioner. So come to me if you want the test. You just have to message me on Instagram. That's probably the best step moving forward. And then the test can get shipped to you even if you're here in Dubai or anywhere in the UAE. Not a problem at all.
Okay.
And then from that's how I then interpret the results and then put a plan in place for the person.
Amazing. Great. Well, thank you so much. It was such an informative session, and I think I'm going to be your next client. So thank you so much
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you, listeners, once again for tuning in to yet another insightful episode of the Illuminations Podcast. If you liked the episode, please click subscribe and share it with your friends. And until then, take care, lots of love, and live light.
Thanks for tuning in to the Illuminations Podcast. We love having you here. It is our mission to be a beacon of light on your journey towards conscious and mindful living. In our weekly episode, we bring you inspiring change makers in the field of spirituality, healing, personal growth, and wellness who share their insight and expertise so you can navigate your way to a happier, healthier, and more purposeful life.